Stanford University.
My own work focuses primarily on the present and future of automobiles. Couple of different areas I'll just mention. I'd really, Michael and I worked together for so many years and so frequently, we thought it would be best if we did it more as sort of an interview or chat, even more so format. But I thought I'd tell you about some of the areas I work in and be happy to answer questions or talk about those. The first area I'm doing a great deal of work in is autonomous cars. So cars that are able to drive themselves, either partially or fully. I spent the past 2 summers working on the Google autonomous car. And during the school years, I have a research lab that is focusing on the psychological aspects of autonomous cars. Now you may say, what the heck is the psychology of an autonomous car? If it's truly driving all the time, it's no different than the psychology of being in a house or anywhere else. And that may or may not be true. It's probably both true and false. But for at least the foreseeable future, autonomous cars are going to be essentially partially autonomous. So there are 2 models of partially autonomous cars. This is one of the most interesting things happening. There's sort of the Google approach to autonomous cars, and there's the car company approach to autonomous cars. And they're very, very different. So the Google approach to autonomous cars is, we want our cars to be fully autonomous. That is, you can read the newspaper, play Angry Birds, do your email, do whatever you want except sleep. We'll talk about that in a minute. You can't sleep. You can do whatever you want for some of the time. And when the car decides that it doesn't know what the heck it's doing, it has the right to say, hey, take over. So this is a model of partial autonomy that is, the car is fully autonomous some of the time. So as you're driving down the highway, the car can be fully driving itself. You can be 100% distracted. But then there could be a time when the car says, your turn to drive. Or, I need you to drive. Or, could you please drive? Yeah.
With a built-in 5-minute warning?
Well, great question. How long does the warning have to be? So the answer is we don't know, which is scary. We think that with the exception of sleep, people can mostly get oriented within about 30 seconds. 30 seconds is both a short and a long time. So the idea is that the car would have to be able to give you 30 seconds notice. So you would have time if you were using a tablet, which is one obvious model. You've got your tablet, whatever you're doing. The car says, hey, need your help. You put down the tablet. You orient yourself to the road. That's a really important issue. We can talk about, I'll mention some scary stories about that. And then you grab the wheel and start driving. One of the scary things that happens is when the car says take over, people put down their tablet, grab the wheel, and then orient themselves. This is not safe, but this is a natural instinct. When I say to you, start driving, you immediately put your hands on the gas, the pedal, the brake, and the steering wheel, and then, because you're not used to having to orient first. So this issue of orientation becomes a very, very important one, and I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. But the idea is that. Now, the cases we don't know about are a few. One obvious one is you're watching a movie about the gladiator days. They didn't have cars. They didn't have anything that looks like roads. Well, Michael can obviously tell you a lot about this, but you don't have to be an archaeologist to know they didn't have cars or other vehicles. So your mind is in Rome, but your car is on 280. How do you shift your mind from being immersed in the tragic love story or the scene of whatever to being back in the road with all the things that happened in the 21st century? So that becomes a real challenge. Sleep, of course, is probably the absolutely unacceptable behavior, because getting people from sleep to knowing that they're actually awake and wakeful and ready is highly problematic. It can certainly take minutes, Sometimes people think they're awake when they're not. If you've ever had the experience of dreaming, waking up, dreaming you woke up, that would be very bad in a car. So realistically, this model of autonomous cars is going to have to figure out a way to keep you awake. But if you're, and in fact, if you look at the laws for autonomous cars, a number of states have now passed laws making it legal to text or read the newspaper, do whatever in an autonomous car. Every single state explicitly disallows sleep. Okay, so one thing you can do. But the idea is with some number of seconds, we don't know if it's 10 or 30. We're pretty sure it won't take a full minute. And that's probably within the range of most vehicles to be smart enough or knowledgeable enough to know that they can figure out what's going on with 30 seconds notice. So that's one model of autonomous car. Fully autonomous, read the newspaper, do anything, use a tablet, play around, do anything you want, play board games with your kid, we don't care. It's autonomous, but then it will take over. You will have to take over at certain points. The advantages of that model is it comes out first, so it's very likely that in the very near future, we will have autonomous cars on the highway. They will not be on local roads because the complexities are such that it would be risky and having to call you back and forth would be distracting. But they'll be on highways, and it'll be a very effective, likely one effective model. The car companies come from a very different culture and tradition, which can best be summarized. How would you feel if your brakes worked 95% of the time? How would you feel if your brakes said to you every now and then, hey, I can't brake, how about you? Okay, that's the mindset of many of the automotive companies. So their approach is the sort of fully capable, limited systems. So automatic cruise control works all the time. Okay, it works all the time. It doesn't often say, I need your help, but that's all it does. Automatic cruise control just automatically. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, cruise control, you'll probably remember, well, I'm sure you remember, means you set a speed, the car goes at that speed come hell or high water. Doesn't matter if there's an obstacle in front of it, it goes at that speed. Doesn't matter what the car's in front of you doing, it goes at that speed. Automatic cruise control tries to keep a speed, but will automatically slow down and speed up depending on road conditions. So that system works virtually always. It doesn't say to you, sorry buddy, I'm not going to automatic cruise control. Similarly with lane keeping, the systems that have lane keeping basically work almost all the time. They work in city and highway when there are lane markers, etc. So the car company's model is little by little, we will add truly autonomous intelligence services that work all the time, and eventually we will bring you to the point that they work 100%. And we will only have autonomous cars when they can drive in the city and the highway when they don't have to bother you. Okay? It's a very different model. Because the car companies are seeing an enormous threat from Google, it is very, very likely that they will shift their model. So if you ask me to predict, I think all car companies are going to end up in the Google model, which is that they're not going to try to just keep on accreting more and more systems until one day they say, surprise, the car is fully autonomous. I think they're going to have to go with a similar model. Whether they wait until they can include some city driving as well is unclear, but it's pretty darn clear we're not going to see the model of complete, waiting for complete autonomy before there's anything that's autonomous. That seems extremely unlikely. That was the line of the car companies up until recently. So the issue in both cases that we're studying is one that turned a handoff from autonomous to not. Another one is what we call the mental model problem. How do you think about and understand a car that's sort of intelligent, but not fully intelligent? How does the car ask you to do things? How does the car personalize and adapt to you in this autonomous situation, et cetera? So there's a lot of work there for safety, for enjoyment, for trust. So my lab has been studying trust for more than 20 years in technology, and so this is one domain. So autonomous cars is an area we do a lot of research in. A second area we do a lot of research in is personalization. The idea that there should be no device, with the possible exception of your cell phone, that has more intimate understanding and knowledge of you and leverages and uses that understanding. So for example, right now there's a big push towards eco-friendly driving, driving that saves gas mileage. And there's lots of different models for doing that. Many of them involve a little marker or maybe a tree that blossoms or gets brown and the leaves fall off, you drive badly, or a little thing that says you're saving gas, you're wasting gas, etc. We can talk about why those are different models of those are good and bad. But one of the best ways to address eco-friendly driving would be for the car to recognize your strengths and weaknesses and adapt to them. So for example, if you're the type of person at a red light, when it turns green, second it turns green, you wail on the gas pedal. That wastes gas. But the car could presumably say, I know this guy. We drive together all the time. He presses the gas too hard. I'm not going to say anything about it because he might get pissed off. I just won't let the gas go through when he presses really hard. That's all. Not going to tell him. And he will find that his gas mileage increases. He'll probably give himself credit, not give me credit. That's okay. It's not the worst thing in the world that I don't get credit, except when he goes to buy a new car. I'd like him to think it was the car that did it, not him. But for the most part, he'll be happy he's saving gas. I'll be happy because I've saved gas. And the world's a happier place. Same thing with steering. If someone takes corners too fast, the car knows that and adjusts accordingly. So I call this the gas pedal, brake, and steering wheel are suggestions. Now this sounds radical. This sounds outrageous. My God, the car making all these decisions for me. But in fact, that's been the way it's been for a very, very long time. So for example, when anti-lock brakes first appeared, no one told you from now on when you press the brake, it's a suggestion to stop. And the car will decide how and when it stops. But it respects your request, give or take. Okay? That's in fact what happens with anti-lock brakes. But most drivers still think that you press down, something presses on the tire that makes it stop, and when you let up, it doesn't. And then there's something that makes the brakes better, called anti-locking. Okay? So similarly, fuel injection means that when you press the gas pedal, it's a suggestion for the car to go faster. We think of it as a suggestion to throw gas into the engine, but that's not in fact the case. There's a lot of ways the car can go faster, and it will decide, it does decide right now, what ways it does that. So in some sense, that really reflects what we call the 4 generations of car intelligence. So there have really been 4 generations of how cars have evolved. The first generation was cars were purely mechanical systems. There was no intelligence in them whatsoever. When you press the gas, it in fact did open a valve. The lower you press to the floor, the larger the valve. When you press the brake, the amount that the brake pads touched the tire were totally a function of how hard you pressed the brake. And that was it. And cars were fine. We then entered the second generation, which is what's called hidden intelligence. Anti-lock brakes, fuel injection, other related systems where the car was smart but didn't tell you. Where the car made decisions but didn't tell you it made decisions. Where everything about the car's intelligence was secret, it simply made things go better. We of course still have those systems. We of course still have mechanical systems. Part of the cars are purely mechanical. Part are hidden intelligence. But we have now entered the third generation of visible intelligence. Automatic cruise control is obviously intelligent. It slows down and speeds up quite logically. But it's obvious it's slowing down and speeding up based on its thinking, quote unquote, its intelligence. So it does that. Similarly, lane keeping. If a car keeps the lane and you're not having to constantly adjust, that's obvious. Car can't hide that fact. So, or automatic park assist. Park assist, note not full parking, but park assist. It's pretty obvious the car's doing something. Can't hide the fact that it's parking. Okay? So there are these, so we're now in the world of partially intelligent, and we will eventually reach the fully autonomous, not only obviously intelligent, but partially autonomous. I mean, we will now eventually enter the era of fully autonomous, 100% autonomous vehicles. How we get there, again, differences between the car industry and Google. Also, one of the interesting differences is, unlike most innovations in the car industry, the industry did a very, very good job articulating the steps to get from point A to point B. One of the problems the industry has had in the case of autonomous cars has been different car companies are producing different smart systems. So Volvo has announced you're going to have the fully autonomous safety package, which will be a bunch of constellation of a bunch of different technologies. It won't be a fully autonomous car, but it'll have a bunch of functions. But those are different for different automakers. There's different inclusions. Some automakers have automatic cruise control and not lane assist. Some have lane assist and not automatic parking. Some have this and that. And there's no coherence in the industry. So the industry is really struggling. Yeah.
You mentioned Volvo. I had just heard this morning that the 2014 Volvo is going to have some sort of traffic control. If you were in stop and go traffic, you could set it and keep going. Is that...
Yes, they just announced, Volvo just announced it for 2000, you're absolutely right, for 2014. One of the problems with automatic cruise control is it doesn't do well when it comes to a full stop. But Volvo's 2014 will come to a full stop.
Cadillac in 2015.
Right. And so, but again, you see, but they're not saying we'll also have lane keeping. They're not saying we also have that, right? So it's this incredibly heterogeneous world, which in the world of software, we're much more used to. You know, wacky world, different things. But in the car industry, we haven't seen this level of heterogeneity, which is, I think, impeding the adoption of autonomous. Yes?
How about weather conditions, for example, slippery road because it's raining, snowing, talking about Volvos, I mean.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So many of the car companies already have systems that adapt somewhat. So first of all, the most important one, of course, is ESP, electronic stabilization. So when the car starts spinning, it basically stops that radical spinning. It's an amazing technology. It was so successful it became required. Probably the fastest time from introduction to being required for all automakers of any technology. So the answer is companies are looking at that. Again, so the issue is, so here's the part of the situation awareness problem. You're reading on a laptop or you're reading on your tablet in an autonomous car. Car says, please take over. And you discover in between the time you got in your car and the time you're now asked to do things, it is pouring rain. Now, that happens to us, of course, but we're actually noticing. Usually we see a few drops first, then more, etc. All of a sudden, you're thrown into a world that's totally alien. So what happens then? Should the car, so hard questions. Should the car be telling you, hey, you may not have noticed, but it started to rain. Don't you worry yet, but some drops. Up, getting a little slippery out there. I still got it, but it's getting a little risky. And then man, if this keeps up, you're driving, you better be there and ready. And then your turn, scary, right? And then eventually, okay, I got it. Certainly understanding how to deal with road conditions is an important problem. Fortunately, there are technologies to detect what's happening in traction, right? That turns out to be a remarkably well understood problem. So you can do that by looking at the spinning, and I am not at all in the technology side of the mechanical technology, but you can look at the relative movement forward, speed of the vehicle relative to the speed of the tire spinning, and you can say, ha, I don't have enough traction. You might have seen in today's Atlantic, Chris Curtis from who is another one of Michael's and my colleague, has an article on his autonomous race car, and has a plot and plan for tracking various road conditions, but doesn't do slippery, but does do skid. So sometimes in racing you want an intentional skid. Joe can explain this much better than I can. But you want an intentional skid, and the car can do that. It can do intentional drifting. I'm sorry, not skid. Drifting is the term. Yeah.
Yeah, they ever thought about feedback. Like it says your turn, and you say, I'm sorry, I'm not ready, I just broke my arm.
Well, that's a great question. The laws as written all say, if the car asks, you answer the call. There's no 4F category in when you're drafted by the car, you're a going. So the answer is yes. So one of the issues is what are the qualifications to drive an autonomous car? And in fact, most states now are proposing a separate driver's license, so that you would, just as you have a chauffeur's license, you have a bus license. Not all states have motorcycle licenses. Some allow you with a regular license to drive a motorcycle. But certainly chauffeur, all states have, I believe all states have chauffeur license, certainly every state has a bus license. So just as that, you would get a special stamp on your car that would say you were a licensed autonomous driver.
I'm good with training, but in the moment, I just broke my arm. Now what?
Well, so that's right, but the answer is if you're stricken by blindness while you're driving, bad things happen. So one of the interesting questions is, how graceful does the car have to be in a bad situation? So for example, the car says, please take over, and you don't, right? And you can't throw your hands on the wheel. So there's two models. One model is all the car has to do is successfully slow down and stop, the same way in the lane. There's another model that says the car has to get over to the side. The second is much harder than the first. Stopping in the lane is an easier problem. We don't know. Right now, none of the laws state. All of the laws about autonomous driving talk about the driver, not the car. And none of them have resolved the liability issues yet either. Although I think that, from talking with people in the law school, is a simpler issue than one might think. Because, first of all, we have had many, many technologies for at least 100 years that operate without people. Factories have things that move and moving parts and do things, and there's no human controlling them, right? Industrial Revolution. So we have those laws. We have laws for trains, okay? So things that go too fast to stop, we have liability laws for those. We have liability laws for things that may be dangerous, but the societies that's decided on balance, they're a good thing. Vaccines. So there's a carve out in law that says if a vaccine causes you a problem, you can't sue. Okay? So we could do that. There's a lot of different things, but I don't think we need new laws. It's more an issue of deciding what laws we want to apply, which aspect of liability law we want to apply to automobiles. And if we do, then we'll get the pull through. So I think the legal issues on the car end and the liability end are overblown. The issues on the driver end, what type of person do you have to be, what type of characteristics do you have to have, I think those aren't overblown because, again, if you drive in a car if you're the type of person who falls asleep when you're sitting in a car as a passenger, you're a passenger until it tells you not to be. So people with good intentions will say, oh no, I'll stay awake. So you may have to have weird laws like you must be texting while driving in an autonomous vehicle, right? Or you must be watching television as you do this or something like that because we need something to keep you awake. That's an actual possibility. We may require people to do stuff. We may say you can't just be looking at the road.
Well, we see cars like airlines where you have two sets and either front or driver can take the wheel.
Right, that's right. But the problem is, again, there are times, so with planes, we have the issue that if the automatic pilot has a right to say, I'm stumped, right? I don't know what the heck to do here. Do you know what to do here? And well, it doesn't even say that. It just says take over. Of course, there's a large difference. So one of the questions I'm always asked is, well, why can't we just learn about how automatic pilot works to design cars? Well, there's a very, very large difference, which is you can't be a bozo and drive a plane. You can be a bozo and drive a car. So the capabilities you need to have to drive a car are much more liberal. Now we could change that. We could just say, again, we could have as part of the licensing requirement, you have to be as skilled and as clever and as have the same reflexes and seeing ability as a pilot or anything else you want. It's unlikely that that's what will happen. It's extremely unlikely for political reasons. But the basic problem, the reason why you can't study pilots is because they're just so well trained, and we don't let most people be pilots. But we do let almost everyone drive a car. So that part, so the design issues are radically different. So we've talked about autonomy, happy to talk more about those issues. Personalization is an area that's extremely interesting, one we focus a lot on. I've talked about one aspect, which is the car adapts itself to you in your driving. There's also an issue for those of you who have used voice interfaces in the car and it doesn't understand you. That turns out to be infuriating, okay? But what if when it didn't understand you, it did what a person did, which was say, I didn't understand that. Could you please tell me let me hear it again, and now tell me what you mean, and I will remember that. That turns out to be good. Even better, we know from the psychology literature that one of the best ways to make people feel bonded to you is to imitate them. Imitation is unbelievably successful. So, for example, if in my navigation system I call San Francisco the city, the first time I say, please take me to the city, the car says, I don't understand. And I say, oh, sorry, I meant San Francisco. Car says, no problem. The city it is. And from that point onward, whenever you're driving, it says, oh, I'll take you to the city. Okay? That turns out to be awesome. People love that. Similarly, if you say a word a strange way, I'm from New Jersey, and there are certain things I say uniquely, like New Jersey. And in fact, when I first started here as a professor, my first quarter here at Stanford, I had a TA from China and a TA from Mexico. And the course evaluations were professor's accent is extremely difficult to understand because New Jersey is just not spoken in California, or at least the thick New Jersey. So I had to practice and take diction lessons and all that to learn to speak English, California English instead of New Jersey English. But I certainly appreciated those students that understood my New Jersey accent, and I would certainly appreciate a car that did the same. You now have the following fabulous scenario. Let's say I own a Nissan, and that car has learned my accent and all this stuff and knows what I call various things, etc. And then when I go to try, I decide I want a new car. If I have a Nissan, I can take a little USB key or some other thing, go to the showroom, plug it in the new Nissan, and it totally understands me. I ain't switching brands, right? Because I go to the Toyota showroom, it doesn't understand me. Well, there's actually a really interesting issue, which is, will we have transportability of data? Will we have the ability, will we have the willingness of car manufacturers to enable you to switch? I'm sorry?
Made these bastards do it.
Well, we didn't really. So that is to say, first of all, Siri doesn't do major adaptation to our voice. And if Siri did, you could bet a lot of money that Apple ain't giving that to Google or other companies. There is no way that's going to happen. Similarly, I don't think that's just Apple. One would suspect if Google did it, they wouldn't give it to Apple either. So we could have a case where we now have a car that's really our intimate friend. It knows all about us. And when we go to buy a new car, we would like to be able to transplant the brain, just as the analogy I give is your best friend moves away. If you could, you'd happily take their brain out, stick it in some other body that was going to be local. You'd gladly do that. Not sure your friend would agree, but you would gladly do that. And so why not do that with technology? So we do that right now with a lot of our consumer appliances. You buy a new phone, a new iPhone or a new Android phone. First thing you do is plug it in, it goes, whoop. Hi, I'm your old phone, except I'm faster and better, right? But I'm basically the same old one. I know everything about you. I remember all your applications. I remember your passwords, et cetera, et cetera. It makes life great. So you get this really interesting, what we call social lock-in. So there are laws about companies locking in. So there was a famous case in the 60s, IBM, Joe, 60s? The lock-in case where IBM would sell computers and every cable was specially constructed and patented. So you couldn't do anything with any other computer, and then major antitrust case said you can't do that, can't have lock-in. So the idea was they all had to share their cable designs, and this is an important thing in the iPhone, Google, Android phone cases. Same idea, what can you lock in? Do you have to license fairly, et cetera, et cetera? But there's no issues of social lock-in. There's never been anything about that. So we know that applications don't have to run. You can build an application that only runs on an iPhone or Google phone. There's no issue there. They don't have to conform. So what will happen in cars? Will it be that car companies can have lock-ins, not of the hidden technology, but the visible interface technology? So how can car companies use interfaces and their knowledge to do it? Yeah?
Unless you're a taxi where you go to different places from different points, you can train your car to go to the places that you go all
Right,
the
but
time.
here's an even better one. So if this was transportable, the car sharing business would be even better. I walk up to a car, I plug in me, and it goes, Cliff, man, cool. You want to go to New Jersey, which is how I pronounced it, and it would happily do that, right? Now all of a sudden, if that's the model, then you have the exact opposite of lock, and I'm happy to have that. In fact, one of the things we've talked about is Audi has talked about using Siri as the interface to its car. But if they use the Siri voice, psychologically, the way your brain works, you're driving an Apple car. Because the voice is the visibly present part of the automobile. So all this work on design, it's unbelievable. If this actually happens, that they use the Siri voice, it will be the stupidest design move in a very, very long time. Because what it means is the ever-present thing you are interacting with is not the car. Even though most cars, of course, try through their design to communicate exactly the opposite, namely, you are driving this car. The steering wheel has it. There's all symbols throughout, etc. That will be an enormous, I think, mistake. It would be horrific. Underlying technology doesn't matter. You don't know who builds any, most people don't know who does the underlying stuff. But if they literally take the branding, if they trade away branding because of the interface in the vehicle, that would be a catastrophic issue. So we do a lot of work on that. We also do work on driver distraction. So back in 2010, my lab and I discovered that people who multitask all the time have tremendous cognitive deficits, which of course is a growing percentage of the whole population, particularly the young. And one of the characteristics of people who multitask all the time is they want to be distracted. Now, this is probably an incredible turning point in human-machine interaction, or human-vehicle interaction as it's called. You look at any textbook on how to design interfaces for vehicles, any systems, alarms, warnings, anything, panels, radio systems, you name it, they all start out and say, with the first sentence of almost every single book is the same. The driver wants to pay attention to the road. You should do nothing to distract them. That is sentence one. It appears every 5th page because that's the single most important thing to know. Except now it's untrue for a growing percentage of the population. What's true instead is people driving truly want to be distracted. Example, cell phones. So cell phones are very dangerous for everyone. They're less dangerous for people who are chronically distracted. Now you might say, that's odd. Why would a cell phone be less troubling to people who are chronically distracted? The reason is why cell phones are dangerous. When people are talking on the phone and driving, talking on the phone becomes the primary focus, and driving becomes the secondary focus. So for heavy multitaskers or highly distractible people, they are distracted by the road. So they actually pay more attention to it because they're distracted more often. So the idea is, if you're talking on the phone, the low multitaskers really focus, they're highly responsible, focused people. They focus on the call and forget about the road. The irresponsible people say, oh, I don't want to, I'm a little bored. What should I look at? Oh, there's some on the road. I'll look at that for a while. Now I'll come back. So it turns out, in fact, that the high multitaskers, even though they have enormous cognitive deficits, do drive better while talking on the phone. They're still bad, still a problem for everybody. So,
tell us what these cognitive deficits are.
okay, so So what we looked at in these studies, this was first reported in 2010, and I'll mention it was the most covered social science story of 2010. So if you missed it, you're not reading correctly. And what we found was we took people who either multitask all the time. What do I mean? Media multitasking means, and what all the time means is, it means when people are using media, be it reading the newspaper, working on the computer, chatting on the text window, texting, etc., they are using on average 4 media at one time, 4 or more media. You may think, who is that bizarre person? Turns out that's 25% of the Stanford population. And in high schools, it may even be, it's probably even higher. So then, so we compare those to people who don't do that, people who use at most 2 media at one time. And we found the following. We found that the high multitaskers were, first of all, highly distractible. So here's the task we gave them. I can probably pull it up on my computer, and I will show you what that looks like. So we can see if you're high multitaskers or not. And as we do this, you can think about the implications for driving. Okay? Here's an example of the cognitive deficits. And as you see this, think about, if you can't do this, what does it say about your driving? Okay? All I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a group of rectangles twice. I'm going to show you 2 pictures. I want you to ignore the blue rectangles and only look at the red rectangles. To make it easy, I'm only going to show you 2 red rectangles. To make it even easier, none of the rectangles are going to move their location. All I'm going to do is rotate one of the rectangles. If you see a red rectangle, rotate, say yes. If you do not see a red rectangle, rotate, say no. Does that make sense, everybody? Very simple. All I'm asking you to do is look at 2 things and to not look at other things. Okay? Here's the example. Oh, shoot, this doesn't, hang on, sorry. No, it has the, well, I guess I can show you on this one. It worked, yeah, really, sorry. Yeah, could you tell? Let me just quickly find you one that's a little clearer for you. Sorry, that was from a more, okay, 1 second here. Take 2 seconds. I did this at Los Altos High School because they're kids who are a very susceptible group. Okay, so that's it. Ready? Did a red rectangle rotate? Yes. Awesome, good job. Okay, if you were a low multitasker, you were unaffected by the number of blue rectangles. 0, 2, 4, 6, no problem. Okay, if you were a high multitasker, the more blue rectangles, the worse you did. So when there were 6, we started with 0, went up to 2, 4, 6. By 6 rectangles, they're dying. They're just dying, okay? So think about it. So they allow irrelevant information in memory. Think about that. Think about, I told you exactly what to look at, and yet the more other stuff, they were distracted. Now, in driving, I could tell you what to look at, but not as specifically as 2 red rectangles. Some diffuse thing called the road, and then there's all this other stuff called, first of all, your center panel, the right side, the left side, people in the back seat, everything. So these guys love to be distracted. I'll show you the one other one. The working memory one is not as relevant for, it's scary, but it's not as relevant. Okay. This is switching from one task to another. So you would have thought this is highly relevant to an automotive context, because people are often switching back from looking at the center panel to the drive, looking at a billboard to the drive, etc. Okay? So this is a task switching test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the word letter or the word number, and then I'm going to show you a letter number pair. So it could be 2B or E7. Okay? 1 letter, 1 number. If you see the word letter, I want you to tell me yes if it's a vowel and no if it's a consonant. If you see the word number, I want you to tell me yes if it's even and no if it's odd. Does that make sense? So the previous thing will do it. Now the reason this is a task switch is sometimes it'll go letter, 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 number. Does that make sense? So that's a switch, and your brain will have to switch. So here it is. So number, yes, but you could be wrong, right? Because even and even. So I gave you an easy one first. Okay. So now we'll do a little harder. Letter? No, very good. Good? Good. Okay. We do a whole bunch of those. So what happens? High multitaskers are much slower when they have to switch from letter to number. So ironically, the irony here is high multitaskers can't help thinking about high multitaskers are bad at multitasking. So even at the thing they practice, so practice makes imperfect here. Well, think how often you have a road situation, then deviation from the road situation. Or looking here, looking at the side, and then going, oh my gosh, I have to switch back to the road. High multitaskers, growing percentage of the youth population, growing percentage of the adult population, because increasingly workplaces are requiring this. It's very bad for your brain. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay. Okay, what I'm going to ask you to do, please don't say anything if you've seen this.
Count how many times the player's wearing white.
Let me make this large. So just count how many times the player's wearing white pass the ball. Okay? Please don't say anything. It's about a minute video. We're not talking about a very long time, so don't worry about that. Okay? How many passes did you get? Okay, so the different numbers, I think the correct number is 16 on this one, yeah. Okay, but now wait. How many of you saw the gorilla? A little more than half, okay? So the rest of you are going, what gorilla? Okay, so let's look again.
Did you spot the gorilla?
Let me also ask, how many of you saw that the curtain changed color? How many of you saw one of the players in black went away? Okay, some of you did. Okay, good. So different things. Okay, I'll show you the gorilla.
I haven't seen or heard about a video like
About half missed the gorilla. Let me
Half missed the gorilla.
let me show you what that looks like.
If you knew about the gorilla, you probably
Okay.
saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player?
So now you can watch for all that.
Let's rewind. Watch it again.
Okay. So see that's yellow. There it is red. Okay. Right? All that happening. Okay. So, yeah, no, people don't see that. So this was initially, used to show something called inattention blindness, which is a terrible name for it. It means when we're focusing on one thing, we're not noticing others. So we show this video to high and low multitaskers. The high multitaskers are more likely to see the gorilla, more likely to see the curtain change color, more likely to see the player in black move, but they get the number of passes wrong. So what does that mean? When they're supposed to be doing something, they like doing something else. So they're not paying attention to what they're supposed to. Now in a car context, that's pretty clear why that's not a good thing, right? Because we want people to pay attention. Now, with autonomous cars, of course, if they were truly autonomous, who would care? You can do whatever the heck you want. But the idea is, how will people be able to get their focus back? Now, imagine you're transitioning from autonomy to non-autonomy. You have to be highly focused. But if you're a high multitasker, which again, growing percentage of the population, that ain't happening. Okay, so that's another really important area here. Yes?
When you drive, you also are thinking. So if you have a road that you know, you'll say, okay, I'm okay. Then I think. When you don't know where you're going, then your attention needs to focus. So there is this attention.
Well, right. So you certainly need more attention in roads where you know, but the problem, of course, is you never really know a road because the other drivers are different. The road situations are different. That is a problem. You're right. So one of the problems is people are the reason the famous quotes, many accidents come close to home is precisely because the amount of cognitive focus and attention you pay is much more limited when you're familiar. But of course, that's a problem because again, whether you're familiar doesn't mean everyone else is. And of course, when you're driving, you have to worry about other drivers, etc. So you don't see people missing the curve in the road if they've driven it every day. People do develop memories and do become very facile at recognizing situations. But of course the problem in driving is there are new situations created, not by like the road all of a sudden was changed, but there are other drivers, there are pedestrians, etc. So one of the things, you're absolutely right. In familiar situations, people are much less likely to notice someone darting across the street.
And that's why you have more accidents near your home.
That's right, exactly. So this issue of paying attention, the problem here is the high multitaskers can't pay attention even when they want to. So even if they really want to pay attention, it's an unfamiliar situation, they know they should pay attention, they're just not as good at it. They're not good at paying attention, even when they're not multitasking, right? Even when they're only doing one thing. So even if they shut off the radio and do all this other stuff, they just can't focus. They're always looking for distraction. It's how their brain works, which is a problem, okay? So that's another, yes?
What is the source of this problem with the multitasking?
It's a great question. So the answer, well, we think the answer actually has two causes. The more interesting of the two is, since as far as there's good data, which is probably from about the 1880s onward, there's been a steady growth in the consumption of media. People every year, literally year over year, including not affected by the Depression, one of the few things that literally goes linearly upward, not affected by World War I or II, not affected by Depression, not affected by anything, is people consume more and more media every year, okay? So if we picture a time budget, let's say you have a time budget, okay? You have an amount of time you can spend doing various things, and you start increasing the amount of time you consume media. So the amount of hours, free hours in the day, non-media hours in the day, keep shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And in fact, the dynamic's even greater, such that every time a new media is introduced, okay, so here's the other part of the dynamic. Every time a new medium is introduced, it does two things. It first displaces other media time. So radio comes along and displaces, so films come along, displace book reading. Not get rid of it all, but take some of the time from book reading. Radio takes time from film, television takes time from radio, internet takes time, right? Things steal from the media budget. But the magic of media is every new medium also steals time from non-media activities. So the amount of time spent with media has grown steadily, stealing time. So here's your time budget, and little by little, more of here's the empty time in your calendar, here's your day planner, here's the empty time. New media comes along, steals more and more time. Started to steal time from the media part of the day, down here, but now is starting to steal time from non-media. Every new medium, okay, rapid growth of new media, right? Zillions of new apps on the App Store, right? Zillions of new channels, new technologies, new media, all this new stuff coming, stealing time, and eventually there's no time left to steal. You gotta be able to eat some, of course, though, increasingly we eat while watching TV or other things, right, or texting or whatever, but eventually you literally run out of time. There's no more time to steal, to consume more media. So did the media stop? No. Do we stop? So you might have guessed at that moment we said, okay, no more time, I give up. Sorry, I'm going to have to just take media, steal media from media time. No, instead what we do is we start double booking. We double book media. So if you have two things, can't fit them in, you try to double book them. So you double book media. Then you triple book media. You quadruple book media. And media supports that, so computers now can play music and do all this other stuff. You can have multiple windows, you can chat with a lot of people, and then you have other media too. So while I'm on my computer, I love this in the dorm. I live in a freshman dorm, and you'll see kids who are, working on the computers, of course, music playing, there's this and that, and they're texting, even though they have IM up over here anyway, they still have to text, and they have a TV on because, whatever, and so there's more devices, there's more technologies per person, and all of these support more than one application at once, right? So I can talk on the phone and check my calendar or read my email, right? Awesome, or not, right? But so even this little stinky thing, I can do at least two things at once. And I can listen to music, okay? 3, awesome, right? But now I've got this bigger thing, can do about 8 more, right? And I can also have a TV going, etc., right? All this stuff going on at the same time, I can do all this, okay? So it's a dynamic of people wanting to consume new media as new media appear. It's why the media industries are doing okay, in a way, right? Which is they consume more, but then they start double, triple, and quadruple booking. That's where multitasking comes from. It's a combination of this lust to consume media, dramatic growth of new media, new opportunities all the time, growing, accelerating, and technologies that happen to support, either by the combination of multiple devices and more things on the device, support this. So what's happening in the car? More and more screen real estate being used. So it used to be there was a dashboard that had rather boring data, tachometer, speedometer, clock, if you wanted to get fancy. There was a single radio thing. Eventually there was also a cassette thing, for those of you old enough to remember that, right? A CD thing. But there were no dynamic screens. Then all of a sudden they said, oh, yes.
So are we going to let them blank out all the windows? I know there have been laws in California about not darkening your front windows.
That's right. But, well, I can tell you that there's tremendous lust from many industries to be able to have so you know the heads-up display? So the idea is I can project on your windshield, okay? Not enough screen real estate. So let's project on your side windows. Let's project on your rear view so when you look in your mirror, it'll say, eat at Joe's, right? So advertising, right? So we would love to propagate Absolutely. There is an interesting argument to be made that one of the key motivations of autonomous cars is to enable the delivery of ads, right? The worst thing about radio advertising is people don't pay attention to the radio. This annoying road, again, distracts them, right? So radio ads in cars aren't as valuable because you're paying attention to something else. But if I could get you to pay attention, I'd love that, right? Advertiser would love it, radio station would love it, everybody would love it. So the idea is, but now you start thinking about all this real estate you have to have ads or content, whatever, right? But of course ads supported. So you can start imagining painting on more and more surfaces of the car. Now, people love it. The demand when you talk with the car companies is people want more and more screens. They're dying to have it, okay? Now, the worry of the industry is if it gets dangerous, it will be banned, and that would be very sad. So we're in fact looking at putting together a consortium of industry. Well, the industry's approached us, actually. I shouldn't say we're looking. The industry approached us and said, we are scared to death. On the one hand, there's an incredible demand for more and more information services. There's incredible technology advances that allow it, right? Easy to do. And we would love to meet that need and desire, but we don't want to. And interestingly, we believe that the measures of attention used currently are flawed. They're based on assumptions about the nature of humans that are flawed, which is true, absolutely true. The traditional measures of distraction are merely eye tracking, just looking where your eyes are, which is a terrible measure. So what they want to do is actually, so we've been approached by a number of car companies, and we may do this, say about 75% chance we will, have a consortium of car companies support the research and say, we will now come up with what are the measures of attention for the 21st century for these new interfaces. What's the appropriate measures and metrics? And have a major cross-university project, bring in people from all different disciplines, and they go to the government and say, hey, we've actually done this careful study of these new technologies. We're in Silicon Valley, which is where all this stuff is happening. We're the right guys to do it. Let's do this, and then we'll come up with standards for what is really attention. So already in our labs, we have drivers doing with EEG, electroencephalogram head, EKG, heart, skin conductance, respiration, and I'm leaving some out, heart blood pressure, temperature, and putting them all together, and of course eye tracking, etc., and put them all together, and you now have a pretty good idea of what people are paying attention to and not. But a simple eye tracking measure is insufficient. Yeah?
For some reason, this makes me think of something I've been researching since in this class, which is Progressive's new snapshot technology. You put a little box in your car, and it tracks when you drive and how you brake and how you step on the acceleration, and allegedly gives you better insurance rates if you don't drive at 4 a.m. or if you don't brake suddenly. So it's almost like it's a passive thing that would be contributing to driving better, because it doesn't even interact with you currently. It's just a box that sits there.
Right.
If it talked to you and gave you advice on this is what you could do to save money, you could do a study like that without a willing participant.
We're Good move. Good design idea. Yes. We're looking we're not doing it with progressive, but we're looking at these systems that'll do it. So take this echo thing, right? So it says you are so if it says you're driving too fast, it's pretty clear what the cure is. Drive slower. But if it says you are wasting gas and doesn't tell you why or how, you get what we call superstitious learning, which is you develop conclusions about what you did to make things. It's how superstitions are created, is you get these weird correlations. So you can talk with people. We actually started interviewing people and asking them, how do you think you get better? The Prius, which is famous for this, right, gets better much. They have the most they're not idiotic. That's absolutely unfair. They are exactly what a human would do if you give sort of shaky feedback that seems consequential. People invent theories. So we're actually looking at how do you do it, but not sounding like a mother-in-law in the back seat, right? So you don't want the car to be a nag. In fact, we encountered this years ago when we designed, I should say for many years I designed voices for cars. And we were asked by BMW to help design their driver voice. It came from, the cause of that was BMW had put a female voice in the navigation system of their car, in their 5 Series cars in Germany. And they had to have a product recall because German drivers would not take directions from a woman. And what's awesome about this, what's totally awesome, is listening to the complaint calls. So people would call up and go, hey, my nav system does not give good directions. And they said, oh, well, what's the problem? They said, it's a woman. And what's great is the reply is, sir, it is not in fact a woman, it is a recorded voice giving you the direct, people didn't know that there was a little person in the car. And then the person says, I can't take directions from women. They said, well, if it makes you feel any better, all of the maps were made by men, which wasn't true, but they said that anyway, okay? And then the guy said, but no, I just can't take directions from a woman, so they had to cast the voice of the car. So now what should the voice of a car sound like? And it's a really fascinating branding and marketing question for any given car. What should the branding or marketing be? How should you do it? So,
You should be able to change it. I mean, there's a famous Star Trek episode about that.
Well, no, but it turns out that's not true. It turns out people are not very good judges of what they will like. It's why movies where you pick the own ending aren't popular, because that's why they pay directors lots and lots of money to figure out what the end should be. You're no good at that. In fact, there are also studies, you ask people to design their perfect friend. You then ask them what their best friend is like. They like their best friend better, because they don't know how to design friends. Right? They don't know what the hell they're doing. They know what a good friend is, but they don't know how to design them. So we did a lot of work with a lot of car companies looking at how do you cast the voice based on brand, what the characteristic position. I'll tell you one funny story about it. So when we work with BMW in the US to come up with their voice, we thought, BMW will have a German sounding engineer. A guy who sounds like a German engineer, because after all, that's why people admire BMWs. People hated it because they thought they were being judged. They said, he knows I'm not driving well. He just knows, and I can't stand it. He's thinking, oh my God, he's terrible. So we couldn't use it. So you had a question, yes?
Do you know why Moses wandered for 40 years in the desert?
No.
Because he would not ask a woman. I just heard that.
That's great. So yeah, so these cultural things matter. So when you cast voices, you have to think about the brand, the culture, etc. Now it's become much more common to have female voices in the car. They differ. I'll play you one really cool clip. Okay, so here it is again.
Hi, my name is Chris, and I will be your virtual passenger for today. We are going to be driving on a coastal road, one that I've traveled many times before, but one that may be new to you. The trip shouldn't take too long, 10 or 15 minutes. Let's get going.
Okay, perfectly happy, chipper voice. Okay, now listen to this one. This is the exact same actress reading the exact same script.
Hi, my name is Chris, and I'll be your virtual passenger for today. We're going to be driving on a coastal road, one that I've traveled many times before, but one that may be new to you. The trip shouldn't take too long, 10 or 15 minutes. Let's get going.
Okay, now you were thinking if anybody put that voice in the car, they would be fired, right? That would be the stupidest thing you could conceivably do in a car is put that voice in it, right? Wrong. So we did a study where we had either happy drivers or upset drivers listening to either that first voice or the second voice. The happy drivers drove much better, liked it better, etc. with the happy voice. The upset drivers drove better, engaged more, thought the car was better when they had the second voice. Why? Because misery loves miserable company. When you are miserable, you don't want some chirky guy going like, let's turn that frown upside down, right? You want to hit that person. You want someone who feels what you feel, who empathizes. So you want the car to empathize. So it turns out that that second voice, which of course, sounds hideous, actually works better. So voice design is another area I've done a bunch of work in the car industry as part of the interface issue. Then of course how the car should talk, what the car should say, does that mix with branding, how does that mix with drivers, etc. So that's sort of a romp through. We've done work on every aspect. We've done probably 25 studies on characteristics of voices in cars, what they should say, etc. Yeah, and then we'll go.
So is there going to be, are they considering options where the voice will change according to your mood when you happen to get in the driver's seat?
Absolutely. Not just your mood, although that's one. It'll change to your accent. It'll change to your cadence and rhythm. So it turns out when we converse, we do this without thinking, we unconsciously adapt to the other person. If I'm a fast speaker, right, I tend to speak faster than average, and you're a slower speaker, we'll tune our speeches. You'll speed up, I'll slow down. We do our pitch. If you have a higher pitch than me, I'll subtly move my pitch up, you'll move it down. We do that with speech rate. We do it with cadence, the amount of cadence and rhythm, the amount of pitch range, the amount of dynamic range in our speech. It's so powerful, common. There's about 10 different terms for it. Accommodation is a common one in the communication field. We accommodate in all these different ways. So the car will do that subtly, slowly, start getting more like you. And when it does that, you will like it better. You will think it's a bit smarter. You'll feel more attached to it, etc.
Are there systems where it will accommodate you day by day? So if I get into the car tonight and I'm in a pissed off mood, it somehow recognizes it as opposed to tomorrow morning when I'm feeling great?
Yes, so the answer is you can detect that in a lot of different ways. If you're talking to your car, in other words, you're giving commands to your car, I can detect it through your voice. If there's a camera in the car, I can detect it through your face. Those are the two most common means. This is an easier problem. Detecting emotion in voice and face is easier because it's the same person. So the general problem of detecting emotion in voice and face is hard for humans, right? Because you all start out differently. But as I get to know you, then I learn this is your happy voice, your sad voice. You're with people with children, your child will call and, kids in the dorm will go, I'll be talking with my son and I'll say, oh, what's wrong? And they'll say, well, what did he say? I said, nothing, I just know his voice, And of course we do that with our children, we do that with friends, with strangers, we don't do that very well, right? But the beauty of a car is, it's the same, if it's the same, especially under the traditional model, it's the same driver, or we have something that says it's me, right? Some USB or whatever that says it's me. So in those cases, the car would adapt to you. Yes, it would learn.
Say something in order to start the car?
Or we do it through a little camera and we do it through face or voice, both. That's how humans do it. We do it okay with posture. We're not great at reading posture. Face and voice are the most expressive things for emotion we have. Posture, if someone walks around like this, you can say, boy, they don't seem real cheerful. But it's more subtle than his face. Faces and voices are just unbelievably expressive, right? But of course, if you don't know the person, it's hard, but the car gets to know you, so it starts getting to know you, and again, it sort of knows how you are. It also can detect patterns, like Mondays are bad for you. So it makes a judgment, as I do, right? If I know you're always crabby on Monday, I make an adjustment for that, right? I know that because, so as you get to know people, you can do all this stuff, and the idea is the car can get to know you. They'll come with, yes, back there.
First, I had one comment, which was I worked for someone and his wife had a Lincoln Navigator, and she wanted to get rid of it because she was sick of having a man telling her what to do. Anyway, and then the other thing is, on this kind of technology that you're talking about here, that the car is adapting to, is that something that's in existence now? Or is it something that's in process?
So it depends on the domain. So in the domain of fuel usage, the systems are there right now. They're modeling. In the responsiveness of steering and transmission, they're not there yet, but they're in development. In the area of voice analysis, they're in development. They're not there yet. So the ones that are, fuel use is the one that right now, how you use the gas is the one that exists. And braking is another one that exists in a more limited way. But all of these technologies are coming out. They're not super difficult. They're not as hard as they sound. They're not trivial, but they're not as hard as they sound. You had a question, yeah?
I was going to say, I actually have a funny story about voices on GPS devices. So I have a roommate in college who had one of these hybrid cars where you could track and see everything. He actually purchased, we spent a long time shopping for different voices for the TomTom and listened to probably like 100 different ones. One we finally settled on, which was not a Frozen Forest one, was sexy TomTom voice. And so it would try and seduce you while you were driving. And it was hilarious. It was really funny, and it was a great time to go into the car every time we did it. And I feel like in a car system where you couldn't choose, I feel like I would totally miss out on that experience.
It's a great point. The problem with quote the funny, so there was a one time a fad of celebrity interfaces. So you could have, Mr. T say "Make my day," go left, or what have you. The problem is, like all jokes, if it's the same joke too often, it's not funny anymore. A joke that's funny the first N times stops being funny, and that's the problem with a lot of those. So the ones that have like snippy remarks, they're funny the first time you hear them, but after a while you get tired of it. So it's one of the problems you see with Siri and other voice interfaces. Jokes are only funny so many times. That's right. So now, the beauty of software, of course, is you could continuously update. So you could imagine the voice getting more and more funny things to say over time. When I worked on a cell phone system for Time Warner called Call Tunes, that was, your phone was a cartoon character. That was part of the model, that every few days you'd get new content. So it was always a fresh interaction. It didn't end up hitting the market for various reasons. But that idea of constantly refreshing content is really critical in any of these social systems. So to adapt, you have to be able to say original things. You also have to be able, conversely, to say familiar things. So there's an amazingly complex relationship where when you know someone very well, sometimes you want to refer to something that you've heard a million times together. That's called an inside joke. That joke is funny, not because the joke is funny, but because the inside part is so important. So developing inside jokes with your car is awesome, right? Like, some guy gets in, they go, and when he goes, God, Fred, jeez, that guy just bugs the hell out of me, and that works, right? Or some other, jokes and stuff that you share. Sharing, Care Bear sharing is caring is really true. If you share things, you can really develop a very close tie, right? You get a very close personal attachment and tie. That works unbelievably well. So you can do that. But the trick is you have to refresh, right? So.
I see that they need to be highly adaptive systems, but when I hear you saying one is going to constantly be detecting my mood, and I feel like I would be driving an extension of myself, and I might not necessarily want that. I might want something controllable.
Right. So it's the difference between you knowing it and not. So here's the difference. I say to you, so I had a friend who did this. He didn't have good social skills. So he went and read a whole bunch of books on social skills. Okay, so he knew all these social skills. So what he would do, he would walk up to people and say, I really want you to like me. So I'm going to do the following things. Okay, I'm going to remember your name and use it all the time. I'm going to do this. And people, of course, guess what? Don't do it. It doesn't work, right? Okay. In fact, the worst case of all was he said, I want you to like me, and I know the way to you'll like me is if I pick up critical information about you and insert it into the conversation. So I'm going to watch everything you do and really pay attention to it and be thinking all the time about what you do. And that's called stalking, right? It's illegal in most states, right? But if he had done that without telling the person, she would have really liked him a lot, right? So the whole trick is, You know the old joke, sincerity is the most important thing, and if you can fake it, you've got it made. That's exactly the issue. So if the card goes, oh, I want to manipulate the hell out of you, so I'm going to do the following things. Yeah, that's bad, right? Or if it says, so again, it's a difference between being suave and being blunt. So the answer is, you tell me you don't. It's like, okay, so one of the first studies I ever did was in flattery. Okay, so we did this system. It's an experiment I did a number of years ago. We had a computer and we had people work with it. And in one condition, we told people, this computer gives you highly accurate feedback on your performance. It's based on 10 years of research. It's really knowledgeable, blah, blah, blah. The other case, we told people, you know what? We haven't had time to write the evaluation software yet, but we just wrote in any old random comments. It's just going to spit them out to you random, just so we have a placeholder for the comments. Okay. And we ran this exact same software. You did the same thing, same performance, same evaluations, and we either had positive ones or negative ones. Okay. So what happens? When it comes to the positive ones, it didn't matter that people knew it was total flattery. They thought they were awesome, and they loved the computer. So people are total suckers for flattery. So if you flatter people, and you're a great audience already, right? But okay, that didn't work. But how many performers at the end of the show go, and you've been a fabulous audience, and you watch the audience, you're like, oh, I've been a fabulous audience. Wow, I'm like, this is great, right? So clearly it works. I mean, there's no question it works awesomely. Flattery works unbelievably. With criticism, it doesn't work. Okay? So, and he was a case where it flat out told you I'm jerking you around. And when it came to flattery, people accepted it. So people love to feel like they're cared for. Right? People love that. People will, it's why so much of mass media is like that. That Barney, I love you, right? All this stuff, right? It's all based on the principle, and that's with kids, but adults do the exact same thing. People want to be cared for. Now, if you tell them I'm caring for you for a pernicious motive, not so good. But if you tell people I don't tell you I'm doing, I just do it gracefully and subtly, you love me. You're suave. It's a difference between suave and, what's the difference between suave and stalking? Being caught, right? Being no, it's really about laying what your motivations are on the table or not, right? Like we did a study, it was really fun. We did a study on persuasion on the web, and we had a system that said, this system is tracking your behavior so that it can make better recommendations for you. We had another system that did the exact same thing and said, this system is tracking your behavior so they can sell you more products. Everything else was, guess what? The one that said I want to sell you more products did not work as well. Okay? But of course it didn't work as well, because what it did was it laid on the table what it's doing, right? But so the whole idea is when you design these interfaces, you don't want to make them so grossly blunt, like, so you walk in happy and it goes, oh, you're happy, I'm happy. And then it says, you're sad, I'm sad, right? If you do that, of course it's not going to work. But that's true of people too. So the whole idea is if the card's going to become your teammate, your friend, right, it's going to have to operate like that. It's going to have to operate as your friend or teammate, which means it doesn't say to you, I want to jerk you around here. It instead says, oh, I care about you. And I don't mean this, I'm not a bad person, right? It's not like I think this is how people, it's not that I think this is why people are nice to other people. That's not what I think at all. I think people are nice. There are many nice people in the world. I really believe that. But what it is to say is faking niceness also works. I'm not saying everyone's faking by any means. I don't think that's true. But I think if faking works, then you can use the strategies of faking to achieve success as a car, period. That's all I'm saying. Again, as long as you don't remind the person, I don't care about you, right? But anything you can do to make people care about you is incredibly powerful. Right? And it works with kids and adults, it works with everybody. So we're going to see a lot more of that. As cars personalize, then that's when you're going to really care about the car. Right? And then it may break down brand. You'll have a direct relationship with your car, but then the issue is who has that. In fact, one of the big policy issues is who owns that data? Right? Who owns that data? Who owns the data of your most intimate feelings? Progressive, flow of progressive, right? I don't know how I feel about flow and progressive knowing my most, right? So that's really an important question. So any adaptive system has to learn about you and remember you. Fine. Who can get that data those data become an enormous issue. It's not I don't do that here, right? Policy is, but that's an important question, right? So do you own that data? Does Nissan own that data? Does, the voice company own the data? Does everybody own the data? Those are huge questions, huge. They're not psychological questions, so they're not they're other people's questions. But that's a huge issue, right? As cars learn more about you, who gets to find out?
Yeah, traffic court.
Exactly, subpoenaable. So in fact, there have been a lot of these issues. There was one a couple of years ago where a car company, if you remember, if you promised on your agreement not to go over 95 or whatever it was, then people got a $200 penalty, and then there was a whole big brouhaha, and the company said these guys signed, and then there were laws passed that the car company, it was a rental, couldn't do that. So that's an issue. In that case, the issue was, what are you allowed to monitor? There was a recent Supreme Court case, 5-4, where they decided you couldn't put tracking, that the police couldn't put tracking, but it wasn't a 9-0. Wasn't a 9-0, it was a close call. So all this issue of whose data is whose, which we always think about as, the web, right? That's one of the interesting things. Like, discussions of web privacy are rampant. I mean, no one knows what the right answer is, but automotive privacy hasn't been a huge topic of discussion, but it's enormous. The progressive one is voluntary. But you could imagine it being, but there were some aspects of law where you're not allowed to make things voluntary, because then there's a bias and all that, and that's not, you can talk to Joe or other people know the law, but I mean, those issues too, right? Not only who owns it, but who gets to look at it, under what circumstances. Is it subpoenaable? Is it, so here's a perfect example. It's tracking your voice, and it discovers you're really drowsy, okay? That's not so hard. Does the car say, hey, in fact, we did a funny case, this was another, so I was invited to one of the Japanese car manufacturers, and they were showing off their new system that could detect how well you were driving. And this was in the early days when it was really hard to, now it's much easier. Right? And they're showing the system, and they have a guy driving, and so they say, oh, you can watch a demonstration. So I'm all excited, so they bring in some random user, and he sits down in the car, and the car says, your driving is not all that good, please pay more attention. Well, guess what? Instead of the guy paying more attention, he gets pissed off, starts driving worse. So the car dutifully says, your driving is getting worse, please, really be careful now. What happens? Guy gets madder, drives worse. Car says, oh, you are really driving quite badly now, please, do stuff, and the guy gets madder still, drives worse, and the car says, please pull over now, you're not really in a fit state to drive, and the guy puts it into a tree. It was a simulator. But of course that happened, right? Like somebody goes, you're not driving well, your first response is not, good point, let me fix that, right? Right? But imagine, right? So take the case of drowsy. So the car knows you're drowsy. Number one, does the car have an obligation to tell you you're drowsy? Should the car turn on or off if you're drowsy? Should the car say, look, I'm not? So it's like the breathalyzer locks, right? But now it's not an activity. It's like it's illegal to drive impaired, right? Which includes drowsiness. But okay, or does the car say, hey, you're drowsy, you should do something? But now it's on the record, I'm drowsy. Now can they subpoena that? Can they say, you knew, I know you knew, because the car told you, right? So then what if I shut it off? I say, car, don't be telling me what I'm doing, because I don't want it on the record that I want. Hard. Right?
But the tone of voice would be very important. If you say to someone, you're not driving very well, be more because, or in a way that entices you to change, then you could do it.
You're right. So you wouldn't say it that way, but again, individual differences. I could learn what would work for you based on your personality, based on things that anger you or frustrate you. I could learn to do it better. There's also structural relationships. Do we have the type of relationship where we can do that or not? Telling my son how to drive better is not pretty, right? No matter how I do it, no matter how lovingly he hears the criticism, right? And that's a kid-father thing that is sort of yucky, lovely and yucky and all the other complex emotions associated with children. But, so what is the relationship between the car and the driver? Of course, you've been driving together a long time, it's different. Maybe the car can tell a joke about it, and sort of, so it's all doable, right? Complicated, but doable. And if so, it could work really well. So you're right. How the tone of voice, when you say it, the words you use, everything, right? Which are all social things, right? So the car now is not a mechanical beast. It is now a social actor, a social presence in your life that makes things interesting. I mean, to me, it's all interesting and exciting, but it makes things more complicated. And the mistakes are worse, right? Like even voice versus text. So we did a project where, you know how a lot of the error messages in computers are incredibly insulting? Well, if you hear them in voice, they're much worse. I'll give you my favorite example. We were doing a study with Amazon.com on their book selling site. They're doing Amazon by phone. The idea was you could order a book. So we purposely had the computer misunderstand you sometimes. So one version of the system, which is the dominant way voice interfaces work now, when it didn't understand you, it would say, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. Could you please repeat it?" In another case, we had it say, "That was not understood. Could you please repeat it?" And the third case was, "Please speak more clearly." Repeat it. Or, "You need to speak more loudly," or "Speak more slowly." So the thing's just telling you, you're a loser. So what happens? So it turns out the system that yells at you, but it's really interesting one. So not surprisingly, people hate it to get yelled at, and not surprisingly, they bought less books. Okay, fine. But when it came to how smart the system was, they actually thought the system that criticized you was the smartest, which is consistent with a principle called brilliant but cruel. It's the idea that negative people are dislikable but more intelligent. And the classic example of this is movie critics. Movie critics who like most movies are seen as much dumber than movie critics that hate most movies. Even though if you think about it, if you hate most movies, you were stupid to become a movie critic because you have to sit in movies all the time, right? So it's sort of dumb. But nonetheless, critics do that. There are studies where they show identical book reviews where Michael knows it right from writing, right? When you read reviews, right, if they're negative, so these people took these book reviews and simply changed the adjectives, everything else was the same, the negative ones were much smarter. And in fact, this is why, like in academic conferences, people are often nasty because you sound smart. Just picture you're sitting in a room and you go, "I agree," or "I disagree." Disagree sounds smarter. Sounds like you really thought about it. Like any idiot can agree. We go silly, right? But that's the thing. So it's the same thing. So how you criticize, and whether you criticize and whether you blame yourself. So it turns out modesty, the interface keeps on going, "I didn't understand," is fine if you want to be liked, but actually people will think you're dumb. They'll think, "Oh yeah, because why would you say you're dumb if you aren't?" Well, but then they better not be telling you what the heck to do. They better not be telling you about how to improve things. But we want them to tell you how to improve things because we want you to drive better, right? Yes, right. So this whole issue of car design becomes extremely complicated. I mean, brutally complicated, because now you're not just designing the body of the car and the interior of the car. You're designing the relationship the car has with the driver. I mean, that's a very complicated. But the win is unbelievable. The win is beyond belief, right? If I can get you to love your car in the way that you might love your car right now, awesome. Just like win. Much easier to get attachment in these social domains. Okay, so we study this. We're trying to design cars that do that make you really feel like they're your friend, your teammate. And again, there's different models, right? There's the car is your friend, the car is your teammate, the car is your coach, the car is your slave. I'll give you an example. When we redesigned the BMW, the voice we chose, we went through this exercise. So I told you about the German engineer. We tried friend, but people didn't like that because it was sort of a weird relationship, telling the car what to do, the car telling you what to do. We eventually came up with a co-pilot. Because for BMW, their branding is, if you think about BMW branding, it's you drive, you're the driver, but whenever you need my help, I'm there. And I'm not going to rub it in your face. I'm just going to make it happen. Right? So it's exactly what you want out of a co-pilot. So we cast the voice of the co-pilot, just like Hollywood, to be like that. Then for other cars, you have different voices, right? Depending on the branding of the car, the user group and the branding, right? And so we did a lot of work casting voices to match, and you can think about different cars, what would be the appropriate brand. Right? And it's all about that. And then it's not just the tone of voice, it's a language choice. So Copilot speak in short sentences. Turns out it's dominant to speak in longer sentences. They speak in short sentences, very few adjectives and adverbs, very, very focused, stuff like that. So when you design, it turns out it's very important. People are acutely aware of inconsistency. It's one of the most powerful human things that we do. We're very acutely aware of inconsistency. So, for example, Mike Tyson, if you remember the boxer Mike Tyson, had a very high, almost childish voice, and it caused a lot of problems. I mean, he had his own problems. He had lots and lots of problems. But one of his problems was because his voice didn't match his enormously large body. People reacted to him very strangely. They treated him as all these things. So it turns out that you have to, when you design these systems, you have to think about the voice, etc. And of course, you do have to think about the classical things too, like design and attention. So you all probably know that, right? Ford got killed on Consumer Reports because of their interface. This was an incredibly traumatic event, incredibly traumatic. Because if you think about it, they said, because your interface is bad, we're not going to even discuss your cars, we're just not recommending them. That was an amazing moment, an incredible moment in car history, that the interface was so important that it wasn't worth discussing anything about the car. Transmission, gas mods, out the door because your interface is bad. I think that was an enormous moment in history. So we may see more moments like that. I've sort of blathered on, I'm sorry.
It's just kept going, I've just let it flow on.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. And if I should respect people's need, but people have been going out, and I think that's fine. We shouldn't be bothered about it. But I've got a couple of things I'd like to share. Okay, so interaction design and getting on relationships, and just a little comment along the way. Actually, it reminded me a long while ago of a shift. In talking about design and in a broad sense of industrial design and such, and Don Norman, who does this kind of stuff, way back when had his book on, what was it called again, The Psychology of Everyday Things.
Right.
And what I loved in that was a little point he made, very simple, which was that his realization that so much about designing things was about etiquette, how the relationship works in terms of being polite, it being, but that whole notion of etiquette, which means it is a balance sometimes between sincerity and just protocol. You just do it a certain way, and it really doesn't matter whether you're sincere or not. It's just nicer, it flows nicer. Anyway, that was an aside. All this stuff you're doing on, getting on with vehicles, how they talk to you, whatever. To what extent are these, and they are, I think, you're right, these new relationships where the interface is mattering in some ways more than other things. How is it going to, in terms of how you're working with these teams of from car companies and things, how is it going to change the look of them? Or is it?
Well, I think...
Are people thinking that? Cars should look different now.
Well, yes, in two ways. So one is that we can now think of a car, we used to think of the car as having an exterior and interior, right? Pretty standard terms. But now we have a third one, which is the relationship, the interface. It's part of the interior in the sense that it's interior, it's inside. But psychologically, it's very different. Just as you, when I talk with you, have you have an exterior, your body, but you also have a personality, a soul, not soul, but personality, orientation, etc. So that's becoming the third. So we now don't just have exterior and interior, we have third. Now, the reason that's very, very important is the relative importance of the interior, exterior, and third is changing. So there are car designers who are known, or car companies, who are known for their wonderful exteriors. There are car companies known for their wonderful interiors. And there are certain cars, when we think of them, we think more of their exterior. Others, we think more of their interior. And we will now think of their personality, soul. Ghosn, who's the CEO of Renault Nissan, says, it's the soul of the car. And he had a wonderful comment I just love when he said, the soul of an electric car is different than the soul of a gas car. But we don't know what the body should be. We don't know what, our bodies don't reflect the souls. I don't know exactly what that means, but it means something. It does mean something.
Sounds intuitively correct.
Yeah, it sounds, something's going on. And similarly, if you said, the soul of the car, that, how you manifest that in the way it talks. And one of the things we know is that the more you have a relationship with a person, the less their exterior matters. We tend to, in fact, we can show this, people we like are more attractive than people we don't like, right? That's good, because that keeps things good. And the same thing. So I think what's happening is, as you have these three parts, it's likely to affect the interior perceptions more than the exterior, that is, the car as you walk up to it. But once you get into the car, if you start talking to it and having a relationship with it, what it looks like interior is going to be less important. The visuals of the car, interior, are going to be less important. Now, exterior is a different animal, of course, because once we're in the car, we don't see the exterior of the car. So that relationship likely doesn't change. It's the interior that's going to change most profoundly, I think.
What you're talking about is these aren't cars anymore in some sense, in the way certainly that we've been hearing, about their history, and this issue of soul has cropped up before.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
And so I'm thinking now there was a case of a failed intelligent transport system in France, which was called, it was it must have been the 70s, it was called Aramis. And it was an intelligent, personalized transport system where you could essentially call up the transport network, and a little personalized vehicle would come to your house. There were tracks in the road. It could navigate, all over the place. It would arrive for you, you'd get in, and then it would take you where you wanted to go. And it could do that by figuring out the most efficient route and how to combine with other cars, individualized units, that were going to be going in kind of the same direction. So it would really make the transport system efficient. You wouldn't have all the commuter problems and such. And the little units, of course, were where you would go, and, well, what would you do? It would be doing everything for you. It was completely autonomous. So what happened was, absolutely, the focus became very inward looking. And so, in fact, it became they looked a lot more like old-fashioned carriages, where you're sitting in a group and you have a table between you and you're talking and conversing. And yes, you can look out the window, but you're not particularly interested at all, actually, in exteriors. So they become units. And to me, that said, well, yeah, because these aren't the driving experiences that people typically associate with cars. And so is it, I just don't know, is it the case that, cars are in fact now, at some point quite soon perhaps, just not going to be the same DNA as earlier cars? They're an entirely different beast.
Well, so in fact, this is interior. There's a really fascinating discussion I had. So I said, okay, if you were to design, if I told you, I want you to design something to make wheels go left and right, would you design something that could impale your chest? Like, if you sat down today, it's really interesting, if I sat down today and said, I want you to design something that causes you to go faster or to slow down and stop. It is extremely unlikely, whatever you came up with. I often think about this as a design exercise. Okay, so I say there's three things I need you to do. The car has to move left and right, sometimes make a 90-degree turn. And this thing called the car has to go faster and slower. And eventually, and sometimes has to stop. I would bet you no one would design a steering wheel. You might come up with something a little like a gas and a brake, possibly not. Probably you'd leave one hand for the gas like this and one for this. But you'd never design a steering wheel because, think about it, it's this large physical object that pokes right at your chest. So the way we solve the incredibly bizarre design of a steering wheel, not bizarre given the context, but the bizarre design given 2012 is we have this airbag, right, and all this other stuff. So I think it's much that it's when you disconnect. So in fact, one study we want to do, we haven't done it yet, is to actually have reins. So you control a car by reins, like a horse. You want to go to the left, you pull the left rein. Want to go to the right, pull the right rein. Want to go faster, go like this. Want to go slower, go like this. I would actually be intrigued as to whether that was a better way to control a car than this idiotic foot, your foot slipped, got 1 foot right, left, blah, blah. It's like, so you start thinking about these radical new conceptions, and I love the reins idea. I just, it's, or an Xbox control panel, or Lord knows, I don't even care. I mean, I do care, but of all the designs, you'd never think of those things. You would never, if you started designing a control system of an automobile in 2012, you'd never do any of these things.
So how did we get to the steering wheel? The initial, electric cars had a pillow, right? And it was
Well, I can give you some answer, which is, if you look at the first passenger trains, okay? So remember, trains come in and they're used to move coal, lumber, junk, right? There are no refrigerated cars, moving like anything. And then says, I got a great idea. Why don't you ride in a car? So I go, okay, great. I feel like a cow. I feel like steerage, right? I'm rich because I have to pay, but I got to be in something that feels like, it could be me one day and cold the next. That doesn't feel right. So some of the designs for the first passenger trains had stagecoach, literally stagecoach, including room for the wheels, which of course didn't exist because you're on a flatbed. So these lovely designs of stagecoach carriages where there's the nice curvy line so that the wheel, which of course doesn't exist anymore, could fit. It's because when you looked at it, you go, that looks like something I should ride in. Whereas if it looks like a train, a little, a thing, I shouldn't ride in it. So there's this notion of affordances. Don Norman actually brings the term to the design literature in that book, on the psychology of everyday things, which is now called the design of everyday things. So if you look in Amazon for it, so it's probably still the most important book on design ever written. And one of the ways that what effective technologies do is sort of tell you how to use them and tell you what to use them for. So there's a lovely movie, if you've ever seen the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy. Okay, it's a lovely movie. There's some issues with it, but so this Coke bottle, it's in the Kalahari Desert. They've never seen any technology. A helicopter or a plane comes by, and someone drops a Coke bottle. And this is a gift from the gods, and they don't know what to do with it. They know you shouldn't drink from it, because to drink from something, it has to have a big round thing, because it's a gourd. So they never have the idea to fill it with liquids, because you never put a little thing that's hard to pour water, into your mouth. So they come up with all these great uses for it, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's the thing. So our culture tells us what things are used for. You look at something and go, that looks like a blop, I should do it. So one of the problems was they wanted to make electric cars familiar. So the last thing you want to do is make them look totally different. You don't want them to look exactly the same. This was Goen's point. Goen was like, we should be at the day very soon. And Nissan was trying to drive this with the Leaf. It's an electric car. It's different. It's new. So we should be allowed to do any damn thing we want to do, and we will do the best thing for it. The problem was, if you don't define a separate category, it's tough. I'll tell you my favorite example of this that led me convinced that I would never make it through the 21st century. I bought one of the first iPhones. It was about a week after it came out. And within a week, all my applications were working except the phone. I couldn't make phone calls. So I go to the Apple store and I say, the weirdest thing. I can use my calendar. There weren't a lot of apps back in those days. I use my calendar. I cannot use the phone. So the guy looks at me and he goes, oh, no problem. You just have to download the phone application. So I said, wait, phone is not an application. Phone is what this is. It is ontologically a phone. Calendar is an application. Other things are applications. Phone is its essence. So then the guy says, you're not going to do well with the iPhone 4, are you? I said, no, I'm not. Right? So it's the same thing. It's like, what is the essence? What is the ontology of the thing? You got to get what that is. And when they told me this wasn't ontologically a phone, it destroyed my life. For weeks I couldn't cope. Because I don't know what it was. I bought a phone, I bought a phone with apps. And they said, no, you bought a computer device that includes phone functionality. I'm like, I wouldn't buy one of those. That's not something I want to have. I have a phone, my God. And so I've coped now. And this is not someone who's a Luddite, right? I've worked in the computer industry. I've designed over 200 technologies. It's not that I'm a Luddite, but it is this issue of what is anything ontologically? What is a car ontologically? And one of the interesting questions is a car something that has a gas pedal, brake, and steering wheel? If it is, then that isn't a car. It's something else. Okay? Now, you get away with that or not. I mean, you could have imagined Apple doing that. It's really interesting, right? Instead of calling it the iPhone 3, they called it amazingly cool device. It can have all sorts of applications, blah, 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 phone, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe they lead with phone. But they didn't. They purposely, to my mind, called it a phone because they wanted it to ontologically be a phone. They wanted that to be the entry point. They wanted that for people to buy. And then once they opened the door, they had you do all these other apps as well. Right? So that's really the interesting question. How do you communicate to a consumer what the thing is without a long narrative, right? In fact, this was in the iPad, in the iPod Samsung, Apple Samsung trial over patents it. One of the arguments was, look, it's got to look like a phone. When you wanted to, said, it's got to basically fit in your hand. It's got to basically be rectangular, So there's only so many ways it could look. In one sense, that's a ridiculous argument. This could be any damn shape it wants to be. It could, and there's plenty of shapes that fit in the human hand. Rectangle isn't the only one. But what they were really saying was, but if it doesn't look like a phone, it's not a phone, right? And I think the same thing's true of cars. Yes, there are other things called transportation, but there may be things that are a car. In fact, one of the most interesting things when Sebastian Thrun has his autonomous car here, I was the first non-engineering type person to actually ride in the driver's seat of the car, which I'll tell you was one of the most scary experiences of my life for a reason I met. But the first thing then was you go in this car and the steering wheel's moving by itself, right? And those days they didn't have the idea you would take over, the car's gonna drive. I go, this feels like a ghost is here. Get rid of the damn steering wheel. We actually wanted to do a study in which we hid the steering wheel because it was freaky. I said, why a steering wheel? Like, does it really use the steering? Like, that's what I was trying to figure out. Like, is he really using the steering wheel to steer? That seems like the stupidest design. Like, imagine you're designing something that will make wheels move. You go, I know what I'm gonna do. There's gonna be this long beam. I'm gonna turn that, and that's gonna make the wheels move, right? I'm going like, this can't be the way you do it. And he said, no, but it's gotta be connected to the steering wheel. And so I'm like, yes. This is sort of weird, like drive-by-wire type things. So the one other story about that was incredibly scary was, I'm not driving, I'm in the autonomous car. And Sebastian says, do you want to see what the car sees? So I said, oh, that sounds cool. He pulls up this radar screen. I dived out of the car. There were weird blips, lines, etc., this and that. I go, what the hell is that? He says, oh, that's a tree. I said, that's nothing like a tree. It's like some squiggly thing here and there. He goes, no, that's what the car thinks a tree is. I said, if that's what a car thinks a tree is, it doesn't understand trees, which means it could hit a tree. God knows, because like it's my deep understanding of trees that lead me not to hit one, right? And same thing in like cars were weird wavy patterns. I'm like, cars don't wave, they're solid objects. And the whole thing scared me to death, okay? And then what he did, so as a favor to me, he put in things like where it would draw a box where it thought, so now if you look at them, they literally draw a box, because it's scary as hell to say, oh, and then I'm driving along and goes, it's like there's a sudden blip. There's this blip where he goes, what's that? He goes, oh, it'll just ignore that. I said, it shouldn't be ignoring what it sees. I don't ignore what I see. Why is it ignoring what it sees? So it was this mental model. So one of the problems in all these cars is, how do I create a mental model for what's going on in the car? I know whatever that is, it shouldn't be the mental. And what's funny, of course, is the engineers are sitting there like enjoying the hell out of this, they're reading the radar. Going like, oh yeah, look, it sees the car. And I'm looking at it going, this is scary as heck. This is terrifying. It's nothing like anything. So that's another issue in illustrate. How can the car create a way to work with us that makes sense, right? So there's a famous quote by Wittgenstein that says, if lions could talk, we still wouldn't know what the hell they're talking about. He said a little more eloquently. But it's the same thing. If a car could see, we still wouldn't know what the hell it's seeing, because what it's seeing is it's seeing in the ultraviolet, it's seeing radar signals, it's this, right? And it's scary as you don't want to drive in one of those. You want to drive in something that sort of understands the road the way you understand the road. So designing an interface, so there's a great interface, because how do you design an interface that makes you believe that what it's seeing is what you're seeing? When it's not. It's a lie. Again, it's a lie, right? This radar doesn't see a car. It has no idea what a car is. It sees objects with velocities, okay? But if it talks about that, it's scary, right? You know, object 3 mile ahead going, totally scary. So that's one of the real challenges in noise interface things. But it's the only way to build trust. The only way we're going to trust someone else is if you speak the same language, right? That's even the words we use for it, right? But the car speaks a language or sees the world in a totally different way. So that challenge of how, it's going to take a lot of work. How does the car communicate in a way that it convinces me that it sees what I see? That's hard. That's really hard. But that's an important issue here, and it's scary. If you look at these systems, what they're really seeing, you wouldn't drive in them.
Well, I think, you know, ghosts in machines
Ghosts
and
in
robots
machines.
who don't see the way we do, but are going to be determining our lives, and the scariness of it all, I think, is entirely appropriate for this evening, and that's where we should finish tonight.
Lovely.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. You have, in fact, been a great audience.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.